Marcus Thompson stepped into the sleek, glass-fronted building of Crestwood Financial, his heart racing with a blend of excitement and trepidation. The early morning sun filtered through the high windows, casting a warm glow on the polished marble floors. He had arrived before dawn, the quiet hum of the city just beginning to stir outside. Today was pivotal. Today, he would present his proposal for a new investment strategy that could potentially reshape the firm's financial future. As he made his way to his office, he couldn't help but notice the empty hallways, a stark contrast to the usual bustle. Every step echoed, a reminder of the isolation he often felt within these walls. Despite his impressive credentials and years of hard work, Marcus often found himself overlooked, his ideas dismissed. He paused at his office door, taking a deep breath to steady himself before entering. "Today is the day," he whispered to himself, as he set down his briefcase and began arranging his notes meticulously. The scent of fresh coffee from the break room wafted through the air, and he allowed himself a moment of optimism. If he could just get his colleagues to listen, to see past their biases, he could finally break through the glass ceiling that had loomed over him for so long. Later, in the conference room, the atmosphere was tense. Marcus sat at the long, mahogany table, surrounded by his colleagues, each a reflection of the corporate world that had been unkind to him. He looked around, noting the air of superiority that hung over the room. Brian, one of the senior executives, fiddled with his tie, while Lisa, another top-ranking official, scrolled through her phone. Marcus felt a flicker of anxiety, but shook it off. He was prepared. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began, his voice steady, despite the flutter of nerves in his stomach. "Today, I'd like to discuss a new approach to our investment strategies that could improve our overall portfolio and increase profitability." He presented his ideas with clarity and conviction, outlining the advantages and potential risks. However, as he spoke, he noticed Brian's disinterested expression. The man leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, clearly unimpressed. There was a moment of silence after Marcus finished. He looked around for validation, but his colleagues exchanged glances, their eyes betraying a lack of interest. "Marcus, that sounds interesting," Brian said dismissively, cutting through the silence. "But I think we should focus on more traditional methods. I mean, we can't just throw money at every new trend that comes along." "Right," Lisa chimed in, a smirk creeping onto her face. "And I believe we have someone here whose main role is to take notes, isn't that right?" She gestured towards Marcus, her tone dripping with condescension. The laughter that followed stung like a slap. Marcus felt the heat creep into his cheeks, a mixture of anger and humiliation. He kept his composure, forcing a smile as he replied, "Actually, I'm presenting today. I believe these strategies are worth considering." The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Yet, behind the veneer of confidence, Marcus was crushed. He could feel the weight of their ignorance pressing down on him, the stereotype they had imposed upon him. How could they refuse to see him for who he was, a qualified professional with legitimate ideas? After the meeting, he stepped into the hallway, seeking solace in the quiet space. There, he overheard Brian and Lisa's voices, their laughter echoing down the corridor. "Can you believe that guy?" Brian scoffed, thinking he could actually contribute something worthwhile. "What a joke, right?" "It's almost sad," Lisa replied. "He should know his place." Marcus's heart sank, but amidst the hurt, a fire ignited within him. They didn't understand his potential, but he would show them. He would prove that he belonged here, not just as a token representative, but as a leader. As he walked back to his office, determination washed over him. Today was just the beginning. He would channel this pain into motivation, crafting a proposal that couldn't be ignored. He would rise above their prejudice, and someday, they would see him as he truly was, a force to be reckoned with. In the dimly lit office, shadows danced across the walls as Marcus Thompson sat hunched over his desk, the glow of his computer screen illuminating his determined expression. Late nights had become a routine, but the weight of expectation rested heavily on his shoulders. He was crafting a proposal for a new initiative that could turn around the struggling division he managed. a feat that could not only save his team, but also silence the naysayers who had underestimated him for far too long. "Marcus, are you still here?" A voice broke through the silence. It was Grace, his mentor and a senior executive at the bank. Her presence was a comforting reminder that he was not alone in this battle against the corporate prejudices that plagued his workplace. "Yeah, just putting the finishing touches on this proposal," he replied, his voice tinged with exhaustion yet laced with hope. "I really think this could make a difference." Grace stepped closer, peering at the screen filled with graphs and projections. "You've worked hard on this. It's well thought out, but you know how they can be," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Don't let them take credit for your hard work." Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. "I know, but if I don't present it well, they'll just dismiss it. They've done that before. Let them underestimate you," Grace encouraged, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "What matters is that you believe in your own worth. Remember, this proposal is your chance to show not just them, but yourself that you belong here." The next day, the conference room was filled with the usual suspects. Executives seated around a long, polished table, their expressions a mix of skepticism and indifference. Marcus stood at the front, his palms slightly sweaty as he clicked through his slides. He could feel Brian's eyes on him, a hawk ready to swoop down and tear apart his work. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Today, I'm excited to present a proposal that could significantly enhance our division's performance and drive revenues." As he laid out his ideas, outlining the strategies he had painstakingly developed, he caught Brian whispering to Lisa, a smirk playing on his lips. Marcus pushed the distraction aside, focusing on the statistics and projections that reflected his vision. Just as he reached a pivotal point in his presentation, Brian interjected, his tone dripping with condescension. "That's a great idea, Marcus. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I think we should consider a different approach. Maybe we can brainstorm together, and I can put together a more comprehensive plan." The room fell silent. Marcus felt the heat rise in his cheeks, a familiar sting of humiliation creeping in. "Actually, Brian, this is my plan. I've done the research but I think it would be more effective if we took a different angle." Brian cut him off, ignoring Marcus's efforts to assert his ownership of the work. A knot tightened in Marcus's stomach. He could hear the murmurs starting among the other executives, the faint whispers of disbelief and doubt. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he thought, frustration simmering beneath the surface. "Why can't they see the effort I've put in?" After the meeting, Marcus retreated to his office, feeling defeated. He slumped in his chair, staring blankly at the wall. The echo of Brian's dismissive tone lingered in his mind, amplifying his insecurities. Just then, a knock at the door brought him back to reality. It was Grace, her expression a mixture of empathy and determination. "Marcus, I saw what happened in there," she said softly, taking a seat across from him. "I know it hurts, but don't let this define you. You have something valuable to offer." "I thought this was my chance, Grace," he confessed, his voice shaking slightly. "But it feels like I'm just invisible to them." "Listen to me." Grace leaned in, her eyes locking onto his. "You're not invisible. You're just in an environment that hasn't recognized your brilliance yet. You have the potential to lead this company one day. Keep pushing forward, and don't let anyone take away your voice." The fire in Marcus's spirit flickered, but did not extinguish. Grace's words ignited a renewed sense of purpose within him. He couldn't allow Brian or anyone else to undermine his journey. With that thought, he straightened his back and nodded, determination blossoming once more. "You're right. I can't give up now." Marcus Thompson strolled through the bustling streets of downtown, the weight of his aspirations heavy on his shoulders. The prospect of networking with influential figures filled him with both excitement and apprehension. Today, he was meeting with Jamal Carter, a philanthropist known for his commitment to fostering diversity in corporate America. As he entered the sleek, glass-walled cafe, he spotted Jamal at a corner table, his presence commanding yet approachable. "Marcus, good to see you," Jamal exclaimed, rising to greet him with a firm handshake. His smile radiated warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environment of Marcus's workplace. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me, Marcus replied, taking a seat across from him. Absolutely, I've heard great things about your work. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on diversity initiatives, Jamal said, leaning in with genuine interest. Marcus felt a spark of confidence igniting within him. I believe that diversity isn't just a checkbox to tick off. It's essential for innovation and success. When different perspectives come together, that's when real magic happens. Jamal nodded, his expression thoughtful. You're absolutely right. I've seen companies thrive when they embrace diversity, but many still struggle with ingrained biases. What's your situation at your company? Marcus hesitated. To be honest, it's been a challenge. Despite my qualifications, I often find myself underestimated, treated as if I'm just an assistant. I'm working on a proposal to change that, but there's resistance. Resistance is to be expected, especially from those threatened by change, Jamal said, his tone steady. But you have to keep pushing. Use your voice, share your experiences. People need to hear what's really happening behind closed doors. Just as their conversation began to gain momentum, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Grace. It read, "Heard Brian's planning something. Stay alert." His heart sank. Brian, the very guy who had taken credit for his proposal, was up to something again. Everything okay? Jamal asked, noticing the shift in Marcus's demeanor. Just a little concerned about my promotion. I think someone is trying to sabotage it, Marcus admitted, frustration creeping into his voice. Who? Jamal's brow furrowed in concern. Brian. He's been undermining me since day one, and I have a feeling he's not done yet. I can't let him derail my progress. Not now, Marcus said, determination flooding his veins. Use this as fuel, Marcus. Gather evidence, rally support. You have to confront him. Don't let him win, Jamal advised, his voice steady and motivating. Marcus nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose, but as he reached his office, the knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He had to prepare for his confrontation with Brian, and he knew he couldn't face it alone. Later that day, Marcus met with Grace in her office, a space filled with books and framed certificates, a testament to her hard work and dedication. She looked up from her desk as he entered, sensing his tension. Marcus, what's on your mind? Grace asked, her voice calm and reassuring. I found out that Brian is planning to sabotage my promotion. I need to confront him, but I want to gather evidence first. I just don't know where to start, Marcus confessed, running a hand through his hair. Grace leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. Let's break it down. Think about any instances where he's undermined you or taken credit for your work. We can compile emails, meeting notes, anything that shows a pattern of his behavior. Right, and I have those meeting notes where he interrupted me and claimed my ideas as his own, Marcus said, excitement beginning to build at the thought of taking action. Perfect. If you can present a clear case, he won't be able to wiggle out of it, Grace encouraged, her confidence in him unwavering. As Marcus gathered his thoughts, the tension in the room thickened. I just need to make sure I do it right. I can't afford to mess this up, he said, his voice low but firm. You won't. You're stronger than you think, Marcus. Just remember, you're not alone in this. I'll support you every step of the way, Grace reassured him, her eyes reflecting a fierce loyalty. With the plan in motion, Marcus felt the fire within him blaze brighter. He was ready to stand up for himself and fight for the recognition he deserved. As he left Grace's office, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment everything would change. Marcus entered the meeting room, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was thick with tension as he took a deep breath, steadying himself for the confrontation he had been anticipating for weeks. The sleek, glass-walled room was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling within him. He glanced at the table, where Brian sat with an air of superiority, flanked by a few other executives who were blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Marcus, you're looking serious today, Brian said, a smirk playing on his lips. What's on your mind? Marcus clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the evidence he had gathered tucked away in his briefcase. I want to discuss your recent actions regarding my promotion, he replied, his voice steady but firm. Brian's smirk faltered slightly. My actions? I'm not sure what you're implying. You know how competitive it is around here. No, Brian. Marcus pressed, leaning forward. I have proof that you've been actively undermining my position. You've been spreading false information to the board, claiming I'm unfit for leadership. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Brian's expression shifted to one of irritation. Proof? What are you talking about? Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out the documents. He spread them across the table, each piece of evidence meticulously organized. Emails, recordings, everything you thought could be hidden. I have it all here. He watched as Brian's face blanched, the facade of confidence slipping away. The other executives leaned in, curiosity piqued. Marcus continued, his voice rising in conviction. You've belittled my contributions, taken credit for my work, and tried to sabotage my career. This stops now. Marcus, you're overreacting. Those emails are taken out of context, Brian stammered, his bravado crumbling. You know how it is? Everyone is under pressure. No, Brian. Marcus shook his head, feeling the surge of empowerment coursing through him. This isn't just about pressure. It's about integrity and respect. I deserve to be treated as an equal, not a subordinate. As he spoke, a few of his colleagues began to share furtive glances, and he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The tension was no longer just between him and Brian. Other employees were leaning forward, intrigued and visibly supportive. Enough is enough, Marcus declared, locking eyes with each person in the room. I'm not the only one who has faced this kind of discrimination. Others have experienced the same belittlement, the same underestimation. It's time we address this together. Are you really suggesting that this is a company-wide issue? Lisa, one of the executives, interjected, her tone dripping with disbelief. You can't be serious. I am serious, Marcus replied, his voice unwavering. And if you think this is just about me, you're mistaken. This is about creating a culture of respect and equality. If the board doesn't take this seriously, they risk losing not just talent, but the very essence of what we claim to stand for. The room grew quiet, and Marcus could see the gears turning in the minds of his colleagues. A few began to nod, and he felt a glimmer of hope. I've spoken to several employees who are willing to come forward with their stories. They're tired of being silenced, tired of feeling like they're invisible. Marcus continued, his passion igniting a fire within him. This isn't just my fight, it's ours. As Marcus finished speaking, the silence was broken by one of the junior employees, a young woman named Jasmine. I believe you, Marcus, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I've seen how hard you work, and I've felt the same discrimination. We need change. Her words seemed to resonate throughout the room, and soon others chimed in, sharing their own experiences of feeling marginalized and overlooked. The floodgates had opened, and it was clear that this moment was becoming a catalyst for change. Brian shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. As the voices grew stronger, the board members began to murmur among themselves, realizing the gravity of the situation. Marcus stood tall, emboldened by the support of his colleagues. The meeting concluded with an air of urgency, and the board of directors was forced to acknowledge the rising tension within the company. An emergency meeting was called to address the issues raised, and Marcus knew that the winds of change were finally beginning to blow in his favor. The fight was far from over, but he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was just the beginning of a long, overdue transformation, and he was ready to lead the charge. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow through the glass walls of the corporate office, Marcus Thompson felt an electric charge in the air. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as news of the current CEO's resignation spread like wildfire. With a groundswell of support building among his colleagues, Marcus's name had been put forward as a candidate for the position. He stood in front of his office mirror, straightening his tie, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Marcus, you know you deserve this. Grace's voice echoed in his mind, her unwavering belief in him like a lifeline. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling within him. Just as he was about to step out of the office, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Lisa, the same colleague who had belittled him in meetings. Curiosity piqued, he opened it, Did you hear? They're considering Marcus for CEO. Can you believe it? What a joke. The text read, followed by a series of laughing emojis. Anger surged through him, hot and fierce. How dare she undermine his candidacy with such baseless rumors? The bile of indignation rose in his throat, but he quickly reminded himself of his purpose. This was bigger than Lisa's petty jealousy. He was fighting for a cause, for every person who had been overlooked and underestimated. With renewed determination, he strode into the conference room where the nomination meeting was set to take place. The room buzzed with chatter as colleagues gathered, their eyes flickering with excitement and curiosity. Marcus took a moment to scan the faces around him, noticing both the supportive smiles of some and the skeptical glances of others. He felt a rush of adrenaline as he prepared to address them. "Thank you all for being here," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at him. "I stand before you today not just as a candidate for CEO, but as a representative of the changes we need to embrace within our company. We have a unique opportunity to redefine our culture and make it inclusive for everyone." As he spoke, he could see the shift in the room. Colleagues leaned in, their attention locked onto him. He continued, "For too long, we've allowed biases to dictate our interactions and decisions. We've overlooked talent based on preconceived notions, and it's time we put an end to that. We must create an environment where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed, regardless of their background." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the walls. Marcus felt a swell of pride. This was what he had fought for. But just as he basked in the moment, his mind flickered back to Lisa and her insidious rumors. How could he ensure that this momentum wouldn't be derailed by her malicious intentions? Later that evening, Marcus sat in his office, poring over notes for his acceptance speech. He wanted every word to resonate, to inspire those who had stood by him. But in the depth of his concentration, he couldn't shake the feeling that Lisa's machinations were still at play. He decided to confront her directly. The next day, he found her in the break room, sipping coffee and gossiping with another colleague. Taking a deep breath, he approached her. "Lisa, can we talk for a moment?" Surprised, she raised an eyebrow, but followed him to a quieter corner. "What's up, Marcus?" "Look, I know you've been spreading rumors about me," he said, keeping his tone even. "I want to be clear. I won't let your actions undermine my candidacy or my vision for this company. We're at a pivotal moment, and I think we should be supporting each other, not tearing each other down." Lisa crossed her arms, feigning indifference. "Oh, please. Everyone knows you're just a token candidate. You really think you can change anything?" "Actually, I do," he replied, meeting her gaze with unwavering confidence. "And I'm committed to proving it. If you have concerns about my qualifications, let's address them openly rather than resorting to petty rumors." For a moment, Lisa seemed taken aback, her bravado faltering. But then she smirked, as if dismissing his words. "Good luck with that." Marcus walked away, feeling the weight of the encounter settle on his shoulders. It was a small victory, but it was a step towards reclaiming his narrative. He could hear the murmurings of support growing louder around him, and he knew he was on the cusp of something monumental. As he prepared for his speech, he felt a sense of purpose wash over him. A promise not just to himself, but to every employee in that room who had ever felt overlooked. With each passing moment, he was ready to take the stage and claim his rightful place, not just as a CEO, but as a leader who would champion change and accountability. As Marcus Thompson settled into his new role as CEO of the company, he felt a wave of both exhilaration and responsibility wash over him. The boardroom, once a place of anxiety and dismissiveness, now felt like a canvas where he could paint a new vision for the future. He gathered his executive team for an initial meeting, determined to initiate a comprehensive review of the company's practices. The air was thick with anticipation as he addressed the room. "Thank you all for being here today," Marcus began, his voice steady and confident. "As you know, I'm committed to making changes that will benefit not just the bottom line, but also our entire workforce. We need to examine our operations critically. It's time to confront any unethical actions that have been overlooked." A murmur ran through the room, and Marcus noticed some of his old colleagues exchanging uneasy glances. He was aware that not everyone was on board with his vision. Brian, still present in the meeting, leaned back in his chair with an air of disbelief. "Are you suggesting there's something wrong with our practices, Marcus?" Brian interjected, attempting to undermine his authority. "That's quite the accusation for someone who just accepted the position." "Not an accusation, Brian. An opportunity for improvement," Marcus replied, unwavering. "I intend to ensure that our company is a place where everyone, regardless of their background, can thrive. We owe it to our employees and our clients." After the meeting, Marcus ordered a thorough audit of the financial reports and operational practices. Over the next few days, he pored over documents, uncovering discrepancies that sent a chill down his spine. It became evident that Brian's mismanagement extended far beyond mere incompetence. It reeked of embezzlement and unethical practices that had put the company at risk. One afternoon, as he sifted through the financial statements, Marcus stumbled upon a series of unauthorized transactions that pointed directly to Brian. His heart raced as he compiled evidence, each piece revealing a deeper layer of corruption. It was shocking, yet validating. The financial struggles that the company faced were not due to external market forces, but rather internal sabotage. Later that week, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere was tense as he laid out his findings. "I believe it's critical we address these issues head-on. The evidence indicates that Brian has engaged in fraudulent activities that have severely impacted our financial health," Marcus stated, meeting the eyes of each board member. "What are you proposing?" Lisa asked, her tone laced with skepticism. She had been one of Brian's staunchest allies and was clearly rattled by the turn of events. "Immediate termination and legal action," Marcus replied firmly. "We cannot allow this to continue. Our integrity is on the line." The board members exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by Marcus's decisiveness. After a lengthy discussion, they reached a consensus. Brian would be terminated, and investigations would be launched into his actions. As the votes were cast, Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. It was a painful but necessary step toward healing the company's wounds. In the days that followed, as news of Brian's termination and the ensuing investigations broke, the atmosphere within the company began to shift. Employees who had previously felt silent started to come forward with their own stories of discrimination and fear. Marcus knew this was the moment to act. He implemented a new diversity initiative, focusing on training, mentorship programs, and open forums for discussion. Standing in front of a diverse group of employees during a company-wide meeting, Marcus felt a swell of pride. Today marks not just a change in leadership, but a commitment to a new culture. We will prioritize inclusivity and accountability. Together, we will build a workplace where everyone feels valued and empowered. As the applause erupted around him, Marcus realized that his journey was not just about personal triumph over adversity. It was about paving the way for a brighter future for all employees, transforming a company plagued by prejudice into one that celebrated diversity. He had not only overcome obstacles, he had dismantled the barriers that had once held him back. With renewed determination and hope, he stood tall, ready to lead his company into a new era.